However, we do have a responsibility to help voters make informed decisions when they vote. To that end, we planned a forum with the 3 candidates for the Congressional District 2, which covers 25 counties in eastern Kansas. We began the process of getting on the candidates' calendars in mid-August. After several follow-up attempts, only one of the 3 candidates running the Congressional District 2 accepted our invitation. So this afternoon, we are welcome to have Michelle de la Isla to answer the questions we have prepared for the forum. Before I get to our first question, Michelle, we would like you to tell us about yourself and why you are running to represent us in Congress.
Well, first of all, good afternoon, and thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this forum. I think it's an honor to be working with the NAACP, all of the work that they do, and the history, especially that the NAACP has in Kansas. Like Ms. Minor said, I am Michelle de la Isla, happen to currently be the mayor of the city of Topeka, and decided to run for Congress back in August. I think it was late August or September that we started experimenting and trying to understand what the issues really were within the district that were of pressing fact and need in our communities to understand if this really was something for me to do. I will tell you that I am extremely happy serving the city of Topeka and all of the progress and the still progress that we have to make in our community. But upon understanding that the issues that are plaguing the district are issues of employment, issues of healthcare, and issues of supporting our farmers so that our supply chain of food continues happening, understanding that education, which is the cornerstone of our democracy and our voters, and being able to ensure that everybody has equal opportunity, and all of those things being at stake. Right around late December, we knew that this was the right time for us to run. We had a seat that we knew was going to be competitive. We did not expect to have the support that we're receiving right now. And the endorsements that are coming through are nothing short of inspirational. And I don't credit that to me. I credit that to all of you in Kansas who are working so hard to make sure that we are able to be successful and are able to have a delegation that is balanced and is able to represent the needs of every constituent in the state of Kansas, not just those who agree with us all the time. So I'll pause at that. I don't want to take too much time with the introduction, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. So we'll start with question number 1. What do you see is the future of Social Security and Medicare?
You know, Social Security is something that we must preserve. It drives me insane when we talk about things that we have all been paying into, talked about something that we are acting like we're entitled to. Of course we are. We paid into this system. And for us to have this system gutted is a shame, especially because it's struggling due to lack of management. We have to make sure that we do something to repair the Social Security system that we and so many other people have put money into. In addition to that, with the issue of Medicare, I am a believer that not only do we need to fortify Medicare, we need to ensure that we are able to negotiate the cost of prescription medications that we are not currently doing. We need to drop that age from 65 to 60 at a minimum so that more people are able to enter into that pool early on. And we need to ensure that people have access to healthcare, period. When we talk about Medicare, even though Medicare is the alternative for individuals once they are over the age of 65, I do believe that we also need to ensure that our country has access to a public option, which in the state of Kansas would be the equivalent of Medicaid expansion that we're all desperately needing. So we need to ensure that we're fortifying that at the same time that we are fortifying pre-existing conditions, which is the premise of the Affordable Health Care Act.
Thank you. How should the federal government support public education?
The first thing that the federal government needs to do is stop talking about funding private schools. There is a place for our private schools. There absolutely is a place. We have wonderful places that are able to bring in children that have scholarships that are private. But the cornerstone of American education is our public school systems. And we cannot continue defunding those schools and making sure that our teachers that are in such need of providing for our students that have ever-growing challenges, mental health challenges, challenges with food, challenges with so many other things that they're bringing into the classroom, that they are able to have good classrooms. In addition to this, we need to figure out ways of ensuring that every child has access to preschool education. We know for a fact that children that are able to participate earlier are able to start bridging the gaps that they may have that will help them become able to read on age, on third grade or higher. And those are things that are markers of success. The other thing that the federal government needs to stop doing is using individuals like me that wanted to get an education and decided that they needed to do student loans because they didn't come from families that could just provide an education free of cost to them, using us as cost centers. My student loans in total probably were close to $25,000. I don't remember the total amount right now, but I have paid that amount and keep paying more. And even right now, one of my student loans, when I was super ill that I defaulted on it, I keep paying every single month and that number does not go down. We cannot continue penalizing people who want to educate themselves. And that is the responsibility of our federal government to ensure that education, everybody has access to it.
What do you think should be put in place to help with student loans and things like that?
You know, I believe that the same way that we did with loans, mortgage, when the market crashed, I used to always say that if I would have been in charge, like I say, queen for a day, and had a magic wand, what I would do is we would restructure and we would do an analysis of how much have people actually paid on their student loans. And then those who have already paid that amount, then stop. Stop. You've already paid your dues. Now let's move on to figure out how we encourage other people to move on. The crisis that we're having right now with student loans is that there's students and individuals that after graduation cannot get a house because their credit has been damaged by their student loan. That's punitive. This is part of a system that wants to keep people without being able to get their education. So if I were able to do that, I would restructure any loan, and anybody that has already paid their fair amount would be forgiven. And then we would create a system of loans that, yes, you would pay a little bit of interest into it, but it wouldn't be as punitive as it is right now, and allow for people, especially those who are in the public sector, like in schools and our teachers and our doctors, that are able to just give back to the community, to figure out ways that they have forgiveness programs that, like the ones that we have now in the state of Kansas, but making those more global. I don't know if everybody's aware that in the state of Kansas, if you become a doctor or if you move into rural communities and help that economy, your loans are forgiven after a while. We have to take a look at those programs and keep expanding them across the country.
Thank you. What would you do to address racial division?
You know, this is one of those things that I keep telling everybody, that we don't have a single hero. I, right now, in my community, am struggling significantly with a community that is divided. And it's sad. And I'll say why. 2 years ago, when I was elected, almost 3 years ago, we had significant tensions in our community. And what we did was that we sat down and we listened to the pain of our members of our city. And then not only did we listen, but we started working on actions. We developed Strengthening in Police Community Relations program, was only the second in the country, developed by the Department of Justice, that was requested by our community that we start. We started working on how to make sure that everybody in our community felt safe around our police department. We were talking about things that most communities don't talk about. Our economic development plan, Momentum 2022, was all about creating equity. And after all of these years of hard work, because of this congressional election, we are starting to see a lot of division in our community. And what's happening is that people are refusing to talk to each other because everybody is so scared. Right now, we have to start being willing to talk. And I think that the way that we start bridging those gaps is by sharing stories. We are all too cognizant that one side of our community does not have the same experiences that the other side of our community does. But if we're not changing those hearts, I could do all the policy changes that I want, but nothing is going to change. And we're going to keep bumping up into what we're bumping into today. So again, some of the things that we were doing before things escalated was making sure that we had programs in which people were able to talk and sit down and create an understanding of the things that needed to change by changing hearts. That's what I will continue to try doing. There comes a point in time in which the heat is so high that we need to let the steam come out, so that then eventually we come together and we keep working. But I think that the best way that we can do is convene people to talk and make sure that we share experiences so that people's hearts start breaking so that real change can happen.
Can you give an example of what you put in place to bring people together to talk about race?
So one of the things that I've done personally, I shared this with you earlier. I have two main groups that I meet with on a regular basis, talking about what are the issues that are happening in our community, so that when there's challenges, it's not just us. I can talk specifically about some changes that we had in our police department, and I don't dare to take full credit for those things because you don't do any of these things on a silo. Our community gets a lot of the credit. Our community said, we want to have meetings because we are upset at the status quo. And I showed up to those meetings. When our community demanded that we have the strengthening police and community relations program, we absolutely responded with a yes. When our community started meeting, talking about changes that they wanted to see, I participated and supported all of those changes. I was sharing with Ms. Miner earlier that I have two groups that I work with on a regular basis. We have our pastors of color that I am not only spiritually guided by, but also in constant communication to understand what's happening in our community. But also we have other members in the community that are helpful to me to understand where the tensions are that can help us intervene. We also put in place an advisory council for the chief. The chief was very trailblazing in this, and we have groups so that people can feel comfortable talking about those issues. And then the other thing that we're doing is championing things in our community for equity for everybody. If we're going to talk about how we're going to move the needle in the systems of equity, for example, we put one of the most exciting technical schools in our district in the city of Topeka where people needed it most. And that is right there a way that we are eliminating barriers for people. The other thing that we've done is that we have a transportation program in our community that if you don't have a car, which is one of the biggest transportation issues, in order for you to be able to better your life, we are able to just send you to work for $5 a ride to the places where have better jobs. So it's not just been me, it's been our community working towards pushing things that I'm supporting with the Topeka Jump Group, for example. And other members in our community that I am saying yes, and I'm supporting and I'm advocating for as well.
Thank you. What do you see as the infrastructure needs for Kansas residents in the 2nd Congressional District?
Well, the first thing that I'll talk about is not just the roads, it's broadband. I think that both in our urban communities as well as in our rural communities especially, there is significant groups of people that, like my friend Lazone Gray says, there is a significant digital divide. We are very fortunate that right now, the governor was very wise in making sure that now individuals that are receiving some benefits are able to receive something that helps with amplifying broadband, but that's not the full answer. We need to make sure that we expand that and that we make it affordable for families, because broadband has not become what it was before, a luxury. Right now, broadband access is a great, great equity issue. You are able to get your education the way that we are talking right now. There's kids all over our community that are not able to do this. And that's not right. And it's not just impacting our kids, it's also impacting our farmers and impacting our families that may need access to healthcare. And telemedicine right now is a really easy way for us to bridge the fact that our hospitals in our district that have closed are not able to be there present to provide good healthcare to our communities. So part of that infrastructure is broadband. And I'm starting with that because it's crucial, especially right now in the middle of this pandemic. And of course, we need to make sure that our neighborhoods have sidewalks, that everybody has access to good roads, and that we continue working on all of the bases of infrastructure of our country, to include making sure that we have equity in renewable resources and energy as well.
Thank you. How would you address climate change as it impacts Kansas?
So Kansas right now is very fortunate. We are the third in the country with regards to wind energy, and we need to continue capitalizing on that. I think that in order for us to keep moving forward, one of the things that's happening is that most of the individuals that have the financial capacity are able to get solar panels in order for them to have clean energy, which again leaves our low income communities with a gap. I'm a huge believer in going into neighborhoods that are dilapidated and taking a lot or two and doing what I would call community solar, and investing in those neighborhoods so that these neighborhoods are able to have patches of solar energy and clean energy as well. In addition to that, the other thing that I believe that the federal government should be investing in, aside from research in how to make these things a little bit more cost effective to help our utilities intervene in this manner, is figuring out how we create storage units for our transmission lines. Our transmission lines are the big lines that we have all across the state that connect us to our power pool. And even though we are able to create a significant amount of wind energy in the state, we're not storing it, which keeps us away from a much more renewable future. I think that the federal government should be investing in ways that we start storing that energy so that we can then capitalize on what we already have.
Thank you. What are your plans for addressing immigration and DACA?
So I believe firmly that our DACA students are first and foremost individuals that came into this country without even having a choice. They know nothing other than this culture. And for us to tell these individuals, hey, you're an adult now, you came in here and you were not legal, and now you need to leave, is a shame. So we need to support and find a pathway for our DACA students to have a pathway to citizenship, so that they can stay in this country that is their home. With regard to immigration, I feel that our border, what's happening in the south border, is atrocious. The way that families are being separated, the way that women are being treated, is something that it's just inhumane. And it's a good reminder to all of us that most of us came in here, and the only natives of this country are our Native American brothers and sisters. Now, that doesn't mean that I believe that we should not have protection for our borders, and that we should ensure, and by the way, it's borders, it's not the border, that we should have protection for our borders to ensure that those individuals that want to come into this country are not individuals with a criminal record. But we should figure out in the same fashion ways to create healthy worker programs so individuals that are interested in coming here to work are able to do so in a legal way, and they don't have to leave everything behind, their families, and risk their life to come into this country to find opportunity.
Thank you. What should be the role of the federal government regarding mass incarceration?
You know, I think that is, I'll speak anecdotally here with regards to my own personal experience. 2018, I received a set of books that, even though I am a woman, a minority that has had racism in my life, and I have seen the way systemic racism operates in our country sometimes, I have to confess that I did not fully understand the extent. And in 2018, Reverend Sarah gave me a set of books. She gave me the book, Just Mercy, and I cried reading the book. And then I read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. I read the book Pulled Over. And in addition to listening to the things that my community was telling me at that same time, I had a rude awakening with regards of not just the 13th Amendment, but the 14th Amendment, the lack of due process that by far, our Black community has in this country. A lot of individuals in our Black community are being incarcerated just because of charges of marijuana, um, which is horrible. I think that we do have a problem of mass incarceration in this country. I think that we need to take a look at how we're finding. I think that we not only need to take a look at how we're finding individuals disproportionately, but we need to, in each of our communities, start addressing um, education in our judicial system, on how we're going to have judicial reform. Um, and we need to absolutely start talking about how do we change the system the way that it is. I had no idea that things were so bad until I read those books and until I was exposed to my community, and sharing with me their own experiences. It's been something that broke me, um, and something that I think that we need to start. And I think that the first wave is figuring out how do we release people that were in there because they were just caught with marijuana. It's horrendous. It's horrendous. There is a problem that we must address.
Is there any programming that you think could be put in place to deal with that?
Absolutely. So I believe that, there's like the city of Topeka, we're very proud of. We have a program that if you have an issue, we give you an opportunity to come in and rectify that by doing some community service. Trying to understand what the root cause is of somebody maybe. So like, for example, a lot of families, I'm a huge advocate for mental health. And I tie mental health to talking about marijuana and talking about drug and alcohol use, because there is so much ingrained trauma in our community, and that people end up self-medicating. So I think that if we start creating programs, which is why healthcare is so important, in which we start addressing for our communities early on mental health, and we start destigmatizing this. And when somebody is caught in a first offense using drugs, if we, rather than saying you're going to go to jail, if we start providing them support, try to understand what are the root causes and start opening up doors to people, you will start seeing those numbers drop significantly. But this is where we are talking about systems, right? This is where you have to start talking about how nobody just wakes up in the morning as a child and thinks this is the future that I want to have. So how do we start addressing that? By making sure that we have good education systems, that we have good resources for our children, so that by the time that they get to a place in which maybe they have made a wrong decision, we have programs that can steer people away from that into resources and opportunities so that they don't end up in a jail.
Thank you. What factors do you think need to be addressed to help our economy recover?
So the first thing that we need to start talking about our economy is the fact that COVID is taking our lunch, right? And we talk about COVID as a health issue, but COVID is both and a health issue and an economic issue. I find it depressing and disappointing that a medical issue has become politicized. And in order for us to bounce back into our economy, we need to make sure that we all understand the gravity of this virus. Because once we are able to start taking care of each other, then our economy is going to start bouncing back. Now, I used to do at Evergy supplier diversity. And I think that we must invest in individuals having access to understanding what it takes to start a small business. And that our community should have access to figuring out ways to just merging smaller businesses with larger corporations so that our businesses can thrive. Most of our economy, a lot of the backbone of our economy is just that. And right now, in the middle of this pandemic, the way that we support that is by keeping people healthy.
Thank you. Given the current divide in Congress, what skills would you bring to access the aisle, to work across the aisle?
So I think that it's important for us to remember the issues that our community is facing right now. These are not issues that are really either Republican or Democrat. Let's be real. We don't wake up in the morning singing a song and a hymn that I'm a Democrat, or I'm a Republican, and I'm only going to worry about the issues that Republicans have. We all wake up in the morning, and if you happen to be as blessed as I am to have kids, you wonder, You know, how are the kids going to do today? One of my favorite mentors, Dale Cushenberry, always says that in an old African proverb, people used to always get into the village and the first thing that they would ask is, how are the children doing? Because based on how the children are doing, then you know that the community is either doing well or not doing well. And I think that when we think about the issues that are impacting people all over the country, everybody's trying to figure out how they're going to be able to provide. Everybody's trying to figure out when this virus is going to end. Everybody's going to try to figure out how they're going to get a job that is going to help them feed their family or take care of their own needs. And in many cases, take care of the needs of the generation that came before them that is now under their care. These are not political issues. These are people issues. So my goal would be to ensure that the same way that I work with a very diverse council with regards to thought, and make sure that we focus constantly on the mission. And the mission is helping people. That we are then able to collectively work with the individuals that have the same heart, regardless of the party, and start moving things forward. And those are the skills that I will bring to Congress, just focusing on people and making sure that those issues, regardless of partisanism, are the ones that we are discussing and advancing.
Thank you. Can you speak to the importance of voting in this election and onward?
It's yes. You know, it's been said often every single year that every election matters. And I think that when I embarked in this election and thinking that I was going to do this, I did so with a very naive heart, thinking that I was so proud of the work that we have been able to do in Topeka, and that maybe, just maybe, because we were talking in our community about equity in our economy, and that we had some amazing things happening with our police department, not perfect, by the way, never perfect, but that we were doing some positive things in our community, that we were bringing people together, talking about issues that matter. Man, we had just celebrated the 65th year of Brown v. Board, right? I thought that we were making progress, and it was okay for me to just jump and run for Congress and try to continue that work elsewhere. And then January hits, and we hear about this virus, and little do we know that in the middle of this virus, we were not only going to have to deal with that, but we were going to have to face the death of Breonna Taylor. We were going to have to deal with watching the brutal murder of George Floyd. And we were going to see our country be more divided than it has been in a long time. Not only did we lose George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, but we had to sit by and watch how we also in that same year lost John Lewis, Reverend C.T. Vivian, and also most recently, Justice Ginsburg. And just when we thought that things were already difficult, now we are taking a look at what's going to happen in that judicial seat. If you don't think that your vote matters, when your health care is on the line, when there's 3 lawsuits to disband the Affordable Health Care Act that protects your pre-existing conditions, when in the state of Kansas, one person gavelled themselves in a room to make sure that Medicaid was not expanded because they did not get their constitutional amendment passed. If you think that things are going to change in your communities across the country, you know what? You need to vote, because what's at stake is too much. It's too much. Our president recently passed a resolution that the body of the work that I used to do, teaching about diversity and inclusion, should not be continued. Your economy is on the line. Your health is on the line more than it has been in prior years. You need to vote, because there is no amount of money that can take over the power of you filling in a circle and making your voice heard. Somebody can give $1 million to make sure that they sway somebody. But if you go in and you exercise your vote, nothing can take that away. We need you to vote. And if you don't think it's important, I will remind all of you that the election that I'm running in, that I should have never been running in because we had a great candidate in Paul Davis, was only lost by 2,239 votes. And Rosa Cavazos, here in Topeka, in Shawnee County, won her election for the school board by 1. We need you to vote. It's important.
Thank you. If you could expand on one of the 10 questions that were asked a little more, they are all very important. Could you expand on one of them?
Wow, they're all so important. If you would allow me a second to pause and ponder.
Yes.
You know, I think that I would take it back to the voting and why it matters right now with our civil unrest. I mean, and it's not because it was the last question asked, but I think it's because it's so poignant right now. You know, let's make no mistake. I mean, we live in a country that has been divided. We live in a country in which we don't really understand our history. And because we don't understand our history, especially our communities of color, have been made to feel like they don't matter in this election, right? You often look at the people who are in leadership, and I can tell you that I never would have thought that I would have been running for office in Congress, because I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me or that had a background like mine. A lot of people see the nice clothes and, you know, the made up face and the straightened hair, because Lord knows that I have to work a lot to get it like this. But guess what? I used to be this kid that came from the projects in the Bronx. I mean, and not the Bronx, in New York, in 122nd Street. And what I was told that I was going to be was very different than what I'm trying to do right now. I would have never, when you look at the people in leadership, there is not a true understanding. And here's the deal, guys. I know for a fact that you are all frustrated because there is not one candidate that is going to align with every single thing that you believe in, and that is not going to work the way that you are working. And I want to remind all of you that there is a part for all of us in our community. There is a part for the individuals that are going to carry the torch of activism and are going to be talking about the issues that matter. But then you need to have the people that bring people together to say, look at what's happening here. How are we going to come together and fix this? There's going to be people that you don't agree with 100%, but that shouldn't stop you from not voting. It should not, because this is the game that is being played in this country right now. You have to go out and exercise that right, because whoever told you that your vote doesn't matter is lying. And most importantly, if you're not content, then run for office. Run for office. We need you. We need your experiences, and we need your perspective to be spoken. But you cannot sit this one back. You cannot. The issues that are at stake this year and that we are going to have to deal with for generations to come are issues that you cannot be blind to. And the other thing that I will say with regards to our position as individuals of color is the fact that we always carry the burden of being not only the oppressed, but the educator. Okay? I love the fact that when Ginsburg passed away, the quote that she said that really carries me through is that fight for the things that you believe in, but do so in a way that you bring others along with you. We need to bring others along with us. And sometimes that burden is hard because we're tired, right? We're so tired. We're tired of dealing with what we're dealing with. And then we have to be nice and explain to people, no, you don't understand where you're at. And your ideas are cemented in something that it's not a true construct. So let me help you understand where you're at. And it's so much easier to respond, actually to react in frustration. You all have power to share your stories in such a way that you convince people of the truth. So I call on all of you to speak your truth in love and in kindness, so that this year we could at least move a little bit forward, a little bit more than where we've been. But in order for us to do that, we need to elect people that at least in some way, somehow, understand the issues and that are willing to speak to the issues and work with other people to make things happen.
Thank you. So in closing, I would like to know if you would like to give us a few closing remarks.
Wow. This has been a thoughtful, provocative conversation, and it's certainly not done. This is going to be a conversation that we must continue having, right? Guys, there's no hero. There's no hero. I'm not here to tell you that I am going to get to Congress and I'm going to be your hero, because the hero is you. And I need every one of you, like Justice Ginsburg did, to dissent to the current state of affairs, to dissent to the division that is plaguing our country, to make sure that we help others go to the poll because it matters. 2016, our Senate said that they wanted for people to wait so that Obama wouldn't appoint somebody months before the election. We're 6 weeks, not even 6 weeks now, almost 5 weeks before an election, and we're going to have somebody appointed that is going to make some determinations that are going to impact your family. We have to come together and speak up and activate ourselves. Figure out who needs a ride. We still can register people to vote. You have to help get people registered and remind them that this election matters. And then after you get people registered, you need to make sure that people either send their ballot in, or that if they need a ride, that they go and figure out a way of dropping off that ballot. Your voice matters. It matters. So please, please, I fervently ask you to get into some good trouble and get your voice heard. That is the biggest act of rebellion that we can do right now.
Thank you very much. We'd like to thank Michelle for joining us this afternoon. The Lawrence Branch NAACP would like to thank you for taking the time this afternoon to be a part of this conversation in order to give voters a more informed decision. I'd also like to remind everybody, as Michelle talked about, voter registration deadline for Kansas is October 13th. You can register to vote online. You can see the addresses here. We'll have it on our Facebook page. Advanced voting in person by mail begins October 14th. You have to request an advanced ballot to be mailed to you for each election. Last day to request an advanced ballot to be mailed is October 27th. The general election is November 3rd. You do need to get out there and vote. It's very important. And Michelle, once again, thank you for being with us this afternoon. This was a really great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.